Ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome. Thank you for attending today's webinar, GTS Virtual Health, a Veterans Affairs Approach Approved Solution for Telehealth. Before we begin, I'd like to cover just a few items regarding the webinar platform. At the bottom of your screen, you'll notice a handful of widgets, mainly the Q&A widget, which you can utilize to submit any questions you have throughout today's webinar session. For viewing purposes, you can also expand your viewing window by clicking on the icon found on the top right corner of your slide viewer. If you have any technical questions, please click the Help widget. And lastly, do take a moment to fill out the survey at the end of today's webinar. Thank you. In just a moment, we'll begin, and then we'll turn the presentation over to Rob. Thank you.
All right, has everyone logged in? We look like we're ready to go. All right.
Yeah, we'll get started.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Rob Schwartz. I cover the Department of Veterans Affairs for Insight. I'm just your regular garden variety sales rep, but I'm privileged today to have my friend, Brendan, on the line here from GTS. Brendan, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Thanks, Rob. My name is Brendan Coughlin. I'm the Executive Vice President and General Manager of Global Telehealth Services. We are a remote patient monitoring and telehealth company, and we've developed a very innovative, very unique platform that can monitor vital readings from patients at home as well as within medical facilities, have that data transported through the cloud and viewed by clinicians in an effort to reduce unnecessary and preventable hospitalizations in patients. The platform has been approved by the Veterans Administration, which we'll talk about, and look forward to spend a little time with you today, Rob. Thanks.
And, you know, one of the reasons that Insight, as a large aggregator, looked into the telehealth space and looked for really GTS is the strength of this offering and the ability for it to take in all of these different IoT devices. So we're kind of like, you know, it may seem like we're an odd couple, but we're really not. We look for best of breed product platform, software, hardware solutions to aggregate solutions together for our customer base. And that's really why we ended up partnering with GTS due to the strength of your platform, Brendan. So, you know, as we think about telehealth and really have all been experiencing a lot of remote interaction, both medically and work-wise, the market seems to be just exploding. Some studies say that it's going to be a $31 billion market by 2023. So this certainly seems like the right time and the right place, and your past performance already in the Department of Veterans Affairs and other healthcare systems seems to be the right solution too. So what do you think has really been the most critical driving question that providers have come to you with, Brendan, at this point, as you know, before we get into your platform? What are they really, what's their biggest concern?
Well, you know, as you indicated, Rob, telehealth and remote patient monitoring have exploded because of the COVID pandemic. This was an industry that was already growing at a very rapid rate, but the COVID pandemic has been a catalyst for widespread adoption for a variety of reasons, and the biggest of which is that, you know, hospitals were forced into a situation where they needed to talk to and screen potential COVID patients without the patients, that is, having to come within the hospital. So, you know, the hospital systems are in a bit of a predicament. They need to be able to diagnose patients, but at the same time, they want to minimize contact with potentially infected patients. And the best way to do that, of course, is through a telehealth platform. And then complementing the ability to have a video conference with a patient is the ability to monitor vital readings or capture vital readings that will help diagnose if a patient is COVID or not COVID positive.
So first and foremost, it sounds like the providers need to be one, we need to have a layer of protection around the providers from the healthcare system because they are very valuable resources to the provider system. Two, we can't really overrun the healthcare system until we need to be able to basically triage the patient,
right,
to have the most severe ones come in and be admitted versus the less severe to non-moderately impacted person can be monitored remotely. Makes great sense. So
that's right.
Is the technology available today, Brendan, for us to really do this on a wide scale?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, the technology's really been available for several years now. But really, the biggest factors, when technology is certainly one of the biggest factors driving demand for remote patient monitoring and telehealth today. Bluetooth enablement of vital monitoring devices has been around for several years now. Certainly the ability to download applications and software into phones to be able to capture that vital data is ubiquitous now. Also driving the awareness and the demand for telehealth and remote patient monitoring is simply investment in the space. A lot of new companies in the last few years many are venture-backed, many startups doing all sorts of different and creative telehealth and remote patient monitoring solutions. And then, of course, there's the realization that essentially 20% of the population makes up about 80% of that healthcare spend. And there's been a problem for a long time of, how do you address the 20% of the population that's really driving 80% of the cost? So there's been certainly a business case to figure out what the best way to address this population is, and telehealth and remote patient monitoring have proven to be very, very effective at allowing care providers to interact in a way with their patients and capture vital data in a way that allows them to see problems developing before they require a hospital visit in typically chronic condition patients. And then finally, as we talked about, COVID-19, which has been a huge catalyst for adoption for all the reasons we just talked about.
And so, Brendan, when we look at telehealth, what do you classify like platforms for telehealth? Could you give the audience a little breakdown on how you view the platforms for telehealth?
Sure. And, the word telehealth means different things to different people, but, I kind of categorize them in three different ways. You've got traditional telehealth, which is the way most people think about it, like a company like a Teladoc, where they provide the ability to communicate with a doctor, whether it's through video or even over phone or text, and the doctor or care provider can diagnose basic things like the flu or the cold or something like that and prescribe medication. So the ability to interact with a doctor is kind of the way most people think of telehealth. But the growing subset of telehealth is remote patient monitoring, and I break that down in a couple different ways as well. So you've got remote patient monitoring that is device specific. So a lot of the data capture platforms in the remote patient monitoring space have been driven by the device makers. So you've got all these different manufacturers of devices that have created their own data capture platforms, but in the vast majority of cases, their data capture platforms are specific to their devices only. So if you've got, Philips, Medtronic, if you think about the big guys, Boston Scientific, GE, they all have their own data capture platforms, but they only work with their devices, so they're closed systems. And then you have companies like GTS, where we've developed a platform that's the opposite. We can integrate any Bluetooth-enabled vital monitoring device or even non-Bluetooth-enabled vital monitoring devices into our platform. So we are a completely device-agnostic remote patient monitoring platform, which for a lot of the hospital systems and certainly for organizations like the Veterans Administration that have invested in hundreds of different types of vital monitoring devices over the year and will likely invest in hundreds more, a platform like ours allows them to capture all that data into a single unified platform.
So it sounds like you're device agnostic. You can reduce the silos of complexity from individual manufacturers, specific product sets, and sometimes the siloed vision around what that device can do and how the information is shared.
Right.
How does this really? Obviously, we have the end user side of this, and we have the hospital side of this. How do we ensure like a successful adoption when we look at the hospital, and then when we look at the end user? How do you rate the complexity of both of those?
Yeah, there's a lot there. I think the keys to successful adoption of remote patient monitoring are, first and foremost, a platform that's customizable in an open architecture, a system that's also alert-based. So, if you're in a system where you've got hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands potentially of patients that are having data fed into a system, most of that data is going to fall within normal ranges. So what you really want to look at are those outliers, those vital data alerts that are being shown when they come into the platform. In other words, the patients whose vital readings are falling outside the norm, the doctors want to be alerted to that, but all the other data that's reading normally just comes normally into the system. As we talked about, having device agnostic, in our view, is a clear advantage as opposed to a device or a data capture platform that only works with a specific manufacturer or maybe a small number of manufacturers. And then, of course, EMR integration. Health systems, one of the biggest priorities for them is having a system that will fall into and work within their current workflow. Minimizing disruption to their workflow is paramount within hospital systems, including the VA. So being able to integrate that platform and have that data flow into their back-end DMR is another big factor. Well,
I'm going to advance the slide, Brendan. I think you've given a fantastic background, and let's. Great. I see some different types of platforms here in the mobile cart. The mobile cart's been around a while. And how do you think that the GTS platform benefits mobile carts and the investment that's already there outside of looking at the other tablet form or the iPad? Right. So first and foremost, the GTS VirtualHealth platform works on any device in any operating environment. We work on Android, we work on iOS, and we actually developed a Windows client version of the platform specifically for the Veterans Administration. They've invested in the numbers we have are in somewhere in the neighborhood of 10,000 carts. They call them cows or wows. These are computers on wheels that were intended to be able to be moved from room to room to be used as a remote patient monitoring telehealth mobile cart. And many of them today are, but there are still a lot of legacy carts that are still required to be plugged into a port. So while they're still functional, they're not ideally, they're not suited to function as they were intended to function. And we were asked to develop a Windows version of our platform that could work on these carts that would allow them to be truly mobile telehealth and remote patient monitoring carts. So we did that. We've tested them on these carts within the Veterans Administration, and we've our platform now allows these carts that normally had to be plugged into a computer port in one of the medical facilities. It now runs on Wi-Fi with our platform on it and can be moved from room to room and used truly as a mobile telehealth and remote patient monitoring solution. Okay, so I see we have a question, Brendan. Do we want? Would you like to answer a question that just came in? Can we? Yeah, sure. Do this. So we have a question wanting to know how would this connect to Vista A inside the VA? Yeah, so certainly we could integrate into Vista. We haven't been asked to yet. I think largely because at some point they're going to be converting over to Cerner. But certainly we could integrate if we were asked to. The way it's working right now is we're working in a couple different markets with the VA, St. Louis and Cleveland. We also have some licenses up in Milwaukee that we're in the process of activating. But in the markets that we're currently active in, the way the data flows and the way the VA requested the data to be received was at the end of each day, the readings that the patients take are sent to the clinicians via a PDF image, via email, and then they open those PDFs and then upload them into Vista via a DICOM image. And would you be able to connect to an HL7 feed?
Yeah, absolutely. Our platform was built certainly with the intent of being able to be integrated into virtually any EMR. So we're built on HL7 and FHIR standards.
So really injecting into the stream of Vista would be fairly easy from the HL7 feed perspective. Right. I mean, some modicum of development work, but not the platform is already set up for it. So,
that's right.
Kelsey, hopefully that if there's more questions around that, we're happy to answer any questions. Any device, Brendan, we're really like, is there things that don't work with this? You know, I obviously could have a laptop, a pad, and a smartphone, correct? So I'm really not limited. I'm imagining there's an agent or an app store that I could download onto my device and move out with this.
Yeah, why don't you advance it to the next slide? But you're right. Our platform works on any phone, any tablet. Oops, sorry, my phone rang. Let me turn that off. As far as vital monitoring devices, our platform, we have the ability to integrate, virtually any Bluetooth-enabled vital monitoring device, as well as USB devices or Wi-Fi devices. Most of the vital monitoring devices that are out there today have Bluetooth enablement, but in fact, for the VA, we were asked as part of our CART solution to integrate a couple of USB devices. One was a streaming stethoscope, and the other was a high-definition wound camera. It was also a USB device. So we do have to get the SDKs from the manufacturer of the devices, but every manufacturer we've spoken to at this point has been extremely cooperative. Obviously, they have an interest in selling their devices into the VA. So every manufacturer we've spoken with has been very cooperative and has allowed us to integrate their devices into the platform. Takes a matter of days. And one of the things, too, that's interesting about that scenario is most devices have some type of software. Now, getting into the VA is challenging because the VA has to do a security review of that software. If the software is going to be used within the medical facilities, it has to go through a SAS review, oftentimes has to go through FedRAMP approval, and that can take months, sometimes over a year. So what was brought to our attention by the OIT within the VA was that our platform could be used as a mechanism for getting devices into the Veterans Administration much faster. In other words, if the device manufacturer were interested and willing to allow us to integrate their devices, they could begin selling the devices in a matter of days or weeks now, as opposed to months or years, while their own data capture platform was moving through the approval process if they wanted to continue down that path.
Gotcha. So really any type of Bluetooth device in theory could be connected to this. And since you already you stated you have some USB connectivity now, we really don't have anything that we can't connect to. So the VA is kind of future-proofing themselves in this space, as we see a lot of those very interesting like IoT like pads and sticky things like the Defense Health Agency is using to capture monitoring and vitals and all these other things that are kind of in the quasi commercial market, but not really. So fantastic. It just really a great foresight to have that capability in there. So I'm going to advance the slide here. This guy, I see him all the time.
Yeah,
yes.
I see there's another question that's come in. Let me address that. The question is, how can you say that your solution is VA approved? Has the VA endorsed the solution? So we've been through the review and approval process through the Veterans Administration. We are currently approved as a SaaS platform for a traditional remote patient monitoring use case, meaning that a veteran can be prescribed this platform and either downloaded to their phone or tablet, or they could be provided a phone or tablet. And as long as they're capturing their vitals outside of a medical facility from their home, for example, again, in a traditional use case manner, then that's the use case that our platform is currently approved for. However, When COVID hit, the VA realized that they needed additional help in fighting COVID within the medical facilities. So our platform has been added to the list of COVID response products. The VA sponsored us for FedRAMP, and we're being taken through, expedited actually, through the FedRAMP process, and we hope to have our full ATO by end of September, early October. Based on the time frame right now, we'll have to see how quickly they can move once we get through our traps on going through our own FedRAMP audit. But certainly within the next 45, 60, 75 days, we expect to be fully or to have our full ATO. And
so you're on the TRM already, correct?
Correct.
So
yes.
You're an approved piece of software and platform, and you have a SaaS approval too. So
correct. Yeah.
Kelsey, let's see if that has answered the question. And as far as really being on that list and getting a fast track through FedRAMP, I will take that as an endorsement, since the government can't really endorse products in that manner. But on the video conferencing side, what's the flow of this? Is this a provider initiated, patient initiated? What's the flow of video conferencing from this iPad with this gentleman, and it appears to be his provider in the background?
Right. So the first thing I'll say about our video is that just as we have an open architecture to integrate devices, we also have an open architecture to integrate video platforms. We've chosen not to develop our own video standard. So the Veterans Administration has a large contract with PECSIP. We've integrated PECSIP for the Veterans Administration. We've also integrated video, and we've also integrated IOCOM, but we essentially have the ability to integrate really any video platform that a customer requests. Now, to get more specifically to your question about how does the flow work, so one of the challenging things or interesting things about the COVID crisis is that the government has lifted HIPAA restrictions. So in theory, a clinician or doctor can communicate with a patient via Zoom or via FaceTime or via Skype or via anything. We expect at some point, though, that that will be changed. But the downside of some of those platforms is that it requires sharing of account information or personal cell phone information or things that your average doctor may not want to share. And it also allows very often the patient to initiate a call. Our approach is we certainly have given the ability for the patient to request a phone call or video call with their care provider, but the care providers need to be able to work that request into their workflow. So while a patient can request a video call or phone call with their doctor, they can't initiate the phone call or video call with their doctor.
Okay. Gotcha.
The doctors are the ones that actually make the initiation, and then will call the patient on the phone or tablet.
Okay, I got that. I see we have another question, and I can back up the slide if you'd like. Would you like to answer that, Brendan, around SaaS platform? Do you include any remote devices, BP cuff, temperature, etc.?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, that's a good question. So we are only the software provider. We do not sell devices, provide devices. In fact, that's one of the reasons that we're working with Insight is they can provide the devices. Now, certainly the VA has their own center for distribution, but if there are certain pieces of hardware that need to be provided, then Insight has the ability to do that. We can integrate based on the needs of the customer, and we can work with the manufacturers directly for that. But again, we don't sell directly any hardware devices, but can integrate any Bluetooth-enabled or non-Bluetooth enabled vital monitoring device.
And thank you for teeing that up for me, Brendan. Yes, one of the values that we bring is the ability to provide any type of IoT or medical device to the government via the large purchasing and procurement processes that we have in place here at Insight and the breadth and scope of a company. So really, if in the best of both worlds, Brendan, do you see hospitals buying devices and your platform all as one fell swoop, or do they buy the platform and then for a few devices? How does this really roll out from a device? Do things just continue to get added? What's been the experience with these devices?
Well, again, we allow the doctors, clinicians to tell us what devices they want to use and prescribe to their patients. So there's for example, there's a multifunction vital monitoring device by a company called Bodymetrics that we integrated specifically for the VA, both in St. Louis and Cleveland. They both like this, the groups that we're working with like this device. They like the fact that with a single device, they can capture, I think, up to 6 readings, vital readings with this particular device, and it just makes it simple. So, the patient downloads the app, they're prescribed the vital monitoring device by their clinician, and they take it home and simply start using it based on whatever their requests are from their clinician. The doctors are going to prescribe a solution to the patient that includes our platform plus whatever devices they request.
So lots of flexibility for, again, future-proofing the stack on whatever new and innovative devices come out onto the market.
Yeah, and one more thing I want to touch on, Rob, before we move off the video, because it's a big differentiator in our platform. So as I talked about, we have the ability to have video conferences through our platform with care providers. Now, the one thing that we have that we haven't seen anywhere else in the market is the ability for, during a live video conference with a doctor and patient, the doctor can request the patient to take readings, vital readings, during the video conference, and those vital readings will actually show up on the screen so the doctor can see those live readings as they're being taken. In other words, they're not going to have to shift to another platform to see those readings come in to see if they're within parameter or not. They'll be able to see those readings come up live on the video screen. That's a very unique feature of ours that we haven't seen anywhere else in the market.
And if I was under an episode of care, can my spouse participate in this, or my brother, or someone else? Is there some other way to have someone to stand beside me or come alongside me and participate with my episode of care with this tool set?
That's actually another unique feature of our platform solution, is the fact that we've developed a separate app that we call Smart Share, which is essentially a companion app. It's going to allow the patient to invite friends, family members, or even a specialist, another doctor if they choose to, into their circle of care. So again, this is a separate app that would be downloaded by the family member or friend, but only on the request of the patient, and only the patient can allow these friends and family members into the circle of care, which conforms with HIPAA. So with this separate app, imagine, I'll just give an example because it'll make more sense. Imagine if there's a veteran that has kids that are, say, in a different state, and this veteran is a little bit older, they've got a few chronic conditions, and their doctor has requested that they begin using the remote patient monitoring, the GTS VirtualHealth remote patient monitoring platform. The family members can see the vitals as they're taken and monitor to make sure that not only that those vital readings are falling within the norms, but also that those vital readings are even being taken. So, a lot of times we've seen where, you've got an aging parent, maybe there's some dementia issues, maybe they just don't want to do it, but having that support system, we found helps really drive compliance, which is another big benefit of our platform. We've got our compliance data with our patient groups is very, very strong.
Fantastic. I'm going to advance the slide here, Brendan.
Sure.
So obviously, there seem to be a lot of use cases surrounding remote patient monitoring and telehealth. What do you think are the big ones outside of COVID today? Because obviously COVID and the ability to catch and monitor patients that are have tested positive, to track their symptoms and severity of them, and then make the appropriate decision as to if they have to seek more intensive hospitalization. Mm-hmm. Where else do you see this going, Brendan?
Yeah, we've touched on the first couple use cases, and the first one is just traditional remote patient monitoring, where a chronic condition patient that's been prescribed our platform and a vital monitoring device or group of vital monitoring devices takes their measurements on a daily, sometimes multiple times a day basis. That data is transferred up through the cloud into our back-end portal so that the care providers can see that data. That's kind of your traditional chronic management use case. Then and we've touched on this as well, just kind of traditional provider-initiated telehealth, the ability for the doctor and the patient to talk via video conference. And as you mentioned, and we haven't talked about yet, COVID patient monitoring. I did mention that the VA was interested in utilizing our platform within VA medical facilities and has added us to the list of COVID response products to get approved. But if you think about what's happening right now with COVID and the reason why the VA wants to use our platform within the medical facilities is the fact that they still need to minimize exposure of infected COVID patients to healthy doctors and nurses, because the worst thing that can happen within a hospital system is that you have a bloom of COVID cases within your healthcare providers. They have to go in quarantine, and it just cripples the hospital system. So this platform, when used within the medical facilities, if you think about it, is a great way to minimize exposure of infected patients to healthy doctors and nurses, because the platform can be used outside of the room of the patient. They can capture the vital data and they can video conference and communicate with the patient without actually having to enter the room and have a face-to-face discussion with the patient and the physical contact and everything else that goes with that. And then, of course, remote COVID screening. We've got, patients that think they might have COVID, and with our platform, it's a great way to be able to capture vital readings and see if there are indicators that would suggest that a patient might have COVID. So it's also great as a remote COVID screening tool.
It seems like we should be using this on the universities too, Brendan.
Seems like we should be using it in a lot of places.
Right, yeah, the college students could have some of this going on, and since we've all, as anyone who's had to go back to college, has had to listen to the COVID pledge that the student has to take.
Right.
So we do have a question on how is this licensed? Does the patient and doctor have to have a license to access the system? So what's the licensing look like for this, Brennan?
So if I think I understand the question, which is, well, I'll answer it both ways because I'm not sure if it's one or the other. But the platform is sold in user licenses, so it's kind of a traditional SaaS model where the health system will acquire licenses for the number of patients they want to use it on. So the way we charge is per patient per month. I think that's what the question is. It's possible they're asking if there are any additional licenses that a doctor or patient might need in order to utilize the platform, and the answer is no.
Just a per patient per month?
Right.
So hospital decides how many incidents of care, how much physician interaction is going to be there with the patient load, and typically start out at some level, and because it's a SaaS product, it can be adjusted up or down based upon utilization.
That's right.
All right. Well, Brendan, the VA is a super important healthcare system in this country to make sure that we are providing for those that are covered in the cloth of this nation. We kind of talked about the FedRAMP. That's super exciting, and I know you can't really rush any of that, but I think you're way ahead of the game in getting this done and being fast-tracked for this. You have good past performance. You have references and your TRM. I mean, in my mind, this is a slam dunk, no-brainer for any healthcare system, federal healthcare system, commercial healthcare system, to really start to move in this direction. What do you think? Do you see any risks around the FedRAMP at this point, or your ATO being expedited or anything?
All I can really tell you is what the VA is telling us, which is they're trying to get our platform pushed through as quickly as possible. We began the FedRAMP process about 3 months ago, and we expect to have it done by the end of September. So, less than 6 months is, as we're being told, extremely quick for full FedRAMP and full ATO. And
that's a record.
They're doing everything that they can to get us pushed through. We're actually going through our third-party audit right now. We just started it, had our kickoff call yesterday with our third-party firm that's going through and conducting our audit for the FedRAMP process. So we're going to be extremely busy with that for the next 30 to 45 days. And again, the VA is telling us that once we get through that they're going to do everything within their power to get us approved and into the medical facilities as quickly as possible.
Fantastic, strong work. It looks like we got another question.
Sure.
So it says, so on the medical provider side, they would not need to access the system. It would be based on how many end user patients accessing the system.
I am not sure I understand that question. So the medical provider said they would not need a license to access the system. Yeah, that's correct. So we don't sell based on provider access. We sell based on the number of patients on the platform, and I believe that's the question. So That's right. If there were, let's say hypothetically, in a medical facility in the VA, there were 100 licenses that were bought for 100 patients, there could be an unlimited number of providers that access the system for care of those patients.
Gotcha. So end user license only, providers just providing the clinical experience. It's really an end user license.
That's correct.
And you can have as many devices attached to that license as permitted by the device manufacturer's ability to transmit that device information into the system.
That's right.
Unlimited. Fantastic. Right. Well, Brendan, I don't know if we have any, I don't think we have any more questions, but I have your email and my email and phone numbers, and we would really like to be able to provide next steps like a demo, a more in-depth conversation to anyone that's interested in this capability that the GTS and Insight provides. And I'll leave it to you. I think we're 8 minutes after. We can give people a few minutes back in their day, and the floor is yours, terrific. Brendan.
Yeah, well, Rob, thank you again for putting this webinar on. Very happy to be a part of it. As Rob said, we are very happy to conduct live demos, have phone calls, answer any questions, additional questions that you may have about it. And we look forward to working with you all. I know that we have some folks from the VA as well as from some folks outside the VA that are attending this call. And please feel free to reach out. We would look forward to speaking with you.
Well, thank you, Brendan. Morgan, we'll hand it back to you.
Thanks, Rob.
Thank you, Brendan.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Brendan and Rob. That concludes today's webinar. A big thank you to the presentation team today and to the attendees. Thank you for your time and your opportunity to come together. With that, we'll turn you back to your day. Thank you.